good. It's good to see you. Thank you for
Yeah,
sending
you too.
over the music.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for checking it out.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely has a different feel from your debut. So I'm looking forward to kind of peeling back the layers of what your vision of this was. Um, where exactly are you located right now?
So now I'm actually in Boston
Okay.
in the States. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Good.
had been in Toronto for the last like 6 years or so,
Okay.
but about a year ago I moved here.
So I guess I want to begin with that before we get into the new album. That's why I was trying. I thought you would come stateside. There's a lot going on in America. You've walked into a cauldron of lots of things between immigration and war, and just things are stressful here in this country. How much of your creating process and delivering music to people are you thinking about giving listeners and even yourself some level of oasis away from everything that's going on? Is that something you're thinking about more now?
Yeah, for sure, actually. I think with the new record, the title is Daybreak, and the the general tone I wanted the album to have, kind of in contrast to my first one, is for it to be a bit more of an optimistic, you know, hopefully hope inspiring kind of sound and feeling to it. And I sort of felt that it had become a bit of the norm at the moment for a lot of art that at least that I've been exposed to become quite negative, and everyone is really focusing on all the problems, which there's no shortage.
Yeah.
Um, and it's easy to get kind of overwhelmed by that. So I thought maybe what's to me felt like is missing is some artists creating with something that should be, a little more uplifting and optimistic in spite of, you know, whatever real problems there really are.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the thing. Artists have always played this very unique role of allowing us to kind of feel like we're bonded together, to feel like things are going to be okay. And I think and especially with live performance, I think it's like film or any other artistic medium. There's a level of us that can kind of slip into this world for a little while and feel okay and feel hopeful about everything.
Yeah, I would love it if, people came away from listening to the album just feeling a tiny bit better, even if just for a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So let's get into the new album. It's your sophomore release. It's the follow up to what was pretty critically acclaimed your debut. Was there pressure? What were you feeling? What were you thinking? What did you want to do with this new one?
Well, for a while, it was that I was just really itching to make more music because even when making the first record, Atlas, there were a few tunes that I had wanted to include, but just wasn't able to pack it all into the same project. And so I was kind of itching to make another record. And it took a couple of years really to get the wheels turning and to get it actually happening. So by the time I was working on it, partly it was just like music I had been dying to actually get out. Um, and then, I don't know if I thought there was pressure or anything. I was really grateful for some of the positive feedback on the first record. Um, but I didn't really experience that as pressure for the second one to be anything. It just, if anything, felt encouraging, like I wanted to keep doing more of this. Yeah, and for myself, I obviously would hope that I'm able to try and make each project better than the previous one. But in a way, I really kind of just wanted it to be its own thing and focus on a certain sound and vibe I was trying to create, not too heavily focused on any kind of direct comparison to the first one or how it might be received comparatively.
Absolutely. So let's dig a little bit further into the vision. What was kind of your overall construction of tunes and the lineup and everything that went into making this album?
hmm So on a sort of like zoomed out level, just the general aesthetic and sound I was kind of hoping to lean into more. I feel like there were sort of sonic elements that I started dabbling with in the production process of the first record to do with how the guitars are layered and, using a lot of the different sounds I can pull out of the instrument and layering them with certain effects and, acoustic, electric, etc. I feel like there's a sprinkle of that in Atlas, and I kind of thought it would be really fun to make a record where that was really the core sound that was just ever present, was this sort of orchestrated, heavily layered, guitar soundscape, you know. So initially, when I started making the record, actually, the first one I recorded was A Thousand Paper Tr Cranes, the fifth track. And initially, I wasn't even sure if it was going to be a band record with drums and bass. I thought maybe it might end up being really just a sort of a solo guitar, but heavily layered type project, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and then as the song started to take shape, I realized I really did want to get, you know, like a rhythm section in there. So on that tune, I ended up recording percussion with this amazing percussionist from where I grew up in Zimbabwe, Othniel Mangoma Moyo. And he added so much to that. It was really awesome. And then for the rest of the record, well, most of the songs, with a few exceptions, but for most of them, I was really lucky to have who I consider just one of the best rhythm sections on the planet, Mike Downs on bass and Mark Kelso on drums, who are like two sort of heroes and mentors of mine. So I don't really have lots to say other than I'm extremely grateful that they were, you know, into it and willing to collaborate and work on the tunes and, you know, offer feedback on things. And they really added a lot in different ways.
So, what has been the difference in your creative, artistic approach to things coming from Canada to America? Has there been a difference? Has there been any level of sea change in the way that you're producing and making things?
It's a good question. I think so for sure, but it's hard to sift through because I feel like my whole kind of lifestyle and everything has changed. You know, there so many things are different from where my life was a couple of years ago. So it's a little hard to narrow it down to just what's changed about my creative process. But, you know, this record actually finished just before leaving Canada was when I finished recording all of that.
Yeah.
So to me, in a way, this record kind of marks that transition or the end of that chapter, whatever that means for me, you know. Um, and I actually have been working on some new music since I've been here. So maybe if we have another conversation in a year or two, we'll be able to compare and
Yeah.
contrast a little more. Um, but I don't know, you know, for me, I don't know that I know there's this huge distinction on how I've like approached art being in this Canada versus the States, but obviously I've met a whole bunch of new people being in a new place, and that's been extremely inspiring and started working with new musicians, new friends. So that's always influential, you know?
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say I've radically changed my whole approach.
Sure. It's a developing story. So, with Daybreak, what are you doing as far as touring? We're entering the warm months, promoting and getting out on the road. What's going on for you as we kind of look forward?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm looking to try and I would love to play this music in the States as much as possible. The the challenge at the moment right now where I'm at is with immigration status and that whole process. I don't need to get into the details, but
Yeah.
it's being from Zimbabwe and trying to immigrate anywhere is challenging. And in the States right now, pretty, it's complicated, you know. So
Hmm.
right now, I'm somewhat restricted as to how much actual travel I could do. I would have loved to have, you know, performed in Canada and, you know, gotten to revisit some of the places I used to play in Toronto.
Yeah.
But for now, I think it's going to be focusing more on the States.
Okay. Good deal. Now, if anybody wants to get a copy, they want to download a copy, anything related to getting Daybreak, how do they do that?
Sure. Well, if they would like to get a CD, the easiest way is to just reach out to me. I'm available everywhere, kind of on Instagram, my website, you know, all the socials. And in terms of getting it online, it's going to be released on March 20th, and it'll be, you know, every platform. So Bandcamp, all the streaming services, Amazon, etc. Bandcamp's a great one. If you like to support the artists,
Yep.
the Bandcamp's a great place to get it.
Uh-huh. So, are you going to do anything big on release day? I'm always curious. Do you have like things planned? What are you going to do for the big release day?
You know, maybe it's a little boring, but I don't have anything planned for the release day itself, you know,
Okay.
although there were some interesting fun facts I kind of discovered as I was picking the release day. That March 20th is also the spring equinox, which I thought was really
Oh,
cool.
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And it sort of, to me, aligned really nicely with the, you know, the album artwork and the whole theme of the record. It kind
Yeah.
of made a lot of sense to me. And then also, you know, I saw somewhere that it's, I think World Ravioli Day. So maybe I'll
Okay,
try and make ravioli.
that's it.
That'd be kind of fun.
That would be awesome. That would be yeah. I mean, that's great. You got ravioli. You got spring. It's a release day. You got your
Yeah,
turkey. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
exactly.
So I will put all of these links in the show notes. Again, Matt, thank you for sending the album over. It's been wonderful to listen to. Looking forward to profiling it on the show. And best of luck with everything as we move forward. And hopefully we'll run into each other down the line here and we'll talk about your American experience a little bit more.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate it. Love to talk again soon.
Absolutely.
Neon Jazz.